All right, we working now? We working? We live? All right, we're live. Jeez, sorry guys. I had some connection issues. Connection down here in Iowa right now is not really the best. All right, we're live. Whew, I was worried it wouldn't work. Welcome you guys to another episode of Arca Racing NASCAR Backmarker News. I apologize for the disruptions with my internet connection, but I'm glad we're going here. Let's get right into it. I'm your host, Colby Evans, host of the Arca Racing podcast and Start and Park Car on YouTube. If you guys want to check out any fun start and park information, check out my Twitter. Check out the couple of videos I've made. Trying to get some content videos uploaded soon. Haven't really had time lately. Trying to make some other scripts. So I'd rather focus on the scripts and then get the content out later and focus on these type of podcast videos instead. Also, follow my good friends Arca Racing on Twitter. Follow Brad Smith on Twitter. He's our main man who makes all this happen. So let's get right into the news. We're going to focus on the Arca portion first, and then, of course, we'll get to the NASCAR portion second. Our first portion of NASCAR news, and, of course, in the chat, Moff is already one step ahead of me. Zachary Tinkle announced that he will be running the season opener at Daytona for Wayne Peterson Racing. He will more than likely be running the same car that he ran at the test, which would have been the then black Ford, but then what we saw at the test that the paint had kind of been stripped, and looks like that they were going to repaint the car, which it did need a new repaint job. The car got pretty beaten up. At Kansas. So good to see that the black Ford will get a new repainting. Not sure if it's going to stay black. It might go to white. It might even go to a different color. I don't know. Or I could see Zachary maybe getting some type of rainbow wrap just for Daytona. I could see that happening as well. I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move for him. Zachary, as we kind of seen lately, if you've been following him on Facebook, his late model team has sadly just went – the money's just not there anymore. And it's really sad because he was a very talented driver. He won quite a few races. I think he even won a track championship. But unfortunately, even with some sponsorship, the money just isn't there. And I know they had a family emergency as well. That didn't help them with funding. And pretty much they've sold, I believe, the entire team in reality. I believe they have sold the entire team. And I think they had the cars, the toter home, cool down units, pretty much everything they've sold. And they've kind of taken that money and went Arca Racing. And I think it's a fun little move for him. I think he's definitely proven himself in the Peterson racing equipment to be very fast. Very fast indeed. And he had to run Daytona, test, obviously get approved. Now note, this car does have a legacy motor. I'm not sure if they're going to be getting an Ilmore for Daytona. That would basically put them at a car that can only go 170 by itself, if lucky. The car can go in the draft. Like if there's a car that's willing to get behind Zachary and push him, then that car can go 185, 186. But by itself, it's nothing more than likely a roadblock, which is a shame that is the case because Zachary, I think if you give him a better car, he could easily stay up there in the draft and be competitive. Same goes for Con Nicolopoulos, who will more than likely be driving the white Chevrolet. Both of those cars have legacy motors. Next bit of ARC information. We did get announced today that the Sioux Chief Showdown will be returning for 2022. And I really like this. And it's something I wish that NASCAR would do in their own series. A championship within a championship, if that makes sense. NASCAR, I believe, should do the same thing. Like maybe 10, maybe because their season's a little longer, about 15 races throughout the season. And at all different types of tracks, road courses, short tracks, intermediates, and super speedways. And maybe race 30, you crown a champion. I think that'd just be really cool. I think that's one of the championships I feels like deserves way more attention than it actually gets. Because it's such a different model. You have Arcas they race on. They'll have dirt tracks. They'll have short tracks. They'll have the intermediates. I think it's just a good combination. I think it's a fun championship that I wish would get more attention. But anyway, the schedule for the Sioux Chief Short Track Showdown, God, man, that's hard to pronounce, will be the Phoenix West Combo Race, Iowa, Berlin, Elko, Mid-Ohio, Lucas Oil Raceway Park, or IRP, Watkins Glen, Milwaukee Mile, DuQuoin Dirt, and will conclude at the Bristol Motor Speedway, which is the East Championship finale race. I think that's a lot of fun. Obviously, my pick for that championship, Sammy Smith. I think if there's one championship that Sammy Smith can count on winning, it's probably at least the Sioux Chief Showdown Championship. Maybe he might not win the main championship, but I think it's going to be pretty tough to beat Sammy Smith for the Sioux Chief Showdown Championship, which I could believe that's probably the one that they're going to look forward to because that one also pays a lot of money to win. But I think it's a good choice of tracks. Like I said, you got the road courses of Mid-Ohio, Watkins Glen. You got the short tracks of IRP and Elko. You got the dirt track of DuQuoin. And even you got the 1 mile Phoenix, which for a track for a series like Arca, a track like Phoenix is a very complicated track for them to run on because cars like that for Arca are not usually made to run on a track like Phoenix. It's very different with the grooves between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then obviously the dog leg. But I think it's going to be very fun. It's a good choice of tracks for this season, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. Some more fun news that doesn't really have to involve with drivers, more is to involve with sponsorship with Arca. As we saw last season with the race at Milwaukee, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Sprecher, I believe, the Sprecher 150, a root beer company, sponsored the Arca race at Milwaukee and will look to sponsor even more Arca racing in 2022. In a post, I believe it was yesterday or today, it said Sprecher becomes the official craft soda of the Arca Menard Series. Sprecher Brewing Incorporation and the Automobile Racing Club of America have announced that Sprecher will become the official craft soda of the Arca Menard Series in 2022. The partnership will see Sprecher Craft Soda enhance their presence at the Arca Series in all 3 divisions, beginning with the first actual Arca event of the season, the Arca East race at New Smyrna. In addition to the craft soda designation, Sprecher will support all Arca Menard Series platform television broadcasts on FS1, MAV TV, and the Flow Racing TV network, as well as become of the Sprecher Lap Leader Award, which will go to the driver who leads the most laps in every race across the Arca Menard Series platform throughout the season. And, of course, a long season award will be given to the driver at the end of the year. If you guys haven't had Sprecher soda, I think it's pretty good. I've gotten it at my local Menards. I will say this. I've never been much of a root beer guy myself, personally. Never been much of a fan of A&W and root beer. But I will say this. Compared to A&W, Sprecher just has a nice little bit like sweeter taste, in my opinion. I think it's a fun. I think it's a little bit better than A&W, but that's just my personal opinion. But it's good to see that Arca has this type of sponsorship. This sponsorship is kind of like what Reese's was last season. Hopefully Reese's comes back with the Sweet Move of the Race award. I really like that they had that sponsorship last season. If we could get Reese's with their sponsorship, and we could get this from Sprecher root beer, it shows that I think Arca has a lot more sponsors in it than people still remember. And I think it's very good for the series. And hopefully they'll be giving out some free Sprecher root beer at the races this season, because I could go for some root beer on a hot day in July, that's for sure. We do have some sad news, though, to report, sadly. I hope I don't botch this guy's name, but you guys have seen it. It was reported on J-Ski. It was reported on ArcaRacing.com. Ron Esau. I hope I'm not botching that name, because this man sadly is no longer with us. He was the 1986 NASCAR Southwest Tour late model champion. He left us sadly at 67. He made 55 starts in what's now the Arca West Series from 1975 to 1998, with a pair of runner-up finishes, one at Willow Springs and the other at Tucson Speedway. 8 career top 5 finishes and 20 top 10 finishes with 3 poles. Sioux's Southwest Tour statistics were impressive, winning the series title in 86 with 4 victories coming at Riverside, Stockton, Shasta, and Willow Springs. His final 2 victories came in 87 and 88 at Shasta and Willow Springs. He actually also made 17 starts in the NASCAR Cup Series, with most of those starts coming at the Riverside, the now defunct Riverside Motor Speedway, Talladega, Watkins Glen, and Richmond with a best of 14th, and even competed in the Calder Park Thunderdome exhibition race in 1990. Again, Ron was 67 years old. In today's world, with people living, I mean, we just had Betty die at 99. We had Bob Saget die at 65. 67 in this world is too young. And it's sad to see that we had a guy like Ron leave us when I think he deserved to be with this racing world for another 20 years. So to the family of Ron Sioux, condolences, I'm sure, from everyone in the chat, to myself. I hope you guys are doing okay, and may Ron rest in peace. And it's a sad loss, no matter what league he or she raced in. Any racing driver passing is always sad news, and I just thought I'd acknowledge that, because although not many of us may not have known him, he left us way too early. And even Dr. Don Tarr, I mean, does anyone remember him? I mean, he was kind of a guy that made a couple of starts in the 70s. Did he make it to the 80s? I think he just ran in the 60s and 70s, but we also lost Dr. Don Tarr a couple of last Friday, I believe we lost him. I don't remember how old he was. I didn't really read an article on that. I just kind of saw it from my man, from NASCAR Man on Twitter. I kind of read about it, but yeah, Ron Sioux and Dr. Don Tarr, that was two losses for the racing world that died before they should have, because they were older, but the term older is not like in the 90s, 80s and 90s, and these guys were still, I would say, fairly young at the time of their deaths. So thought I'd give that a shout out because it deserves it. Condolences to those families, and may those 2 racing legends Godspeed you both, and rest in peace. So, but I thought we established that real quick, but let's get on to some more positive news. Obviously, we do have some Arca news that will tie into some NASCAR news later, but DGR did announce today, and I kind of went over this a couple of weeks ago or a couple episodes ago, that DGR, David Gilliland Racing, was really scaling back on their Arca program, and that looks like it has come to fruition, as DGR will not be fielding an entry for the Daytona Arca race. Will not. Tanner Gray will not be running the Daytona Arca race as he did last season. And it looks like that the only series that DGR will be competing in will be just the East Series. With, of course, though, that coming with 4 main Arca starts with the Combo Series, and they will also run the West Series finale at Phoenix. So it looks like that DGR's Arca program has went from, 3 full-time cars and a part-time car 4 years ago, to now just 1 car in the East Series. They will not be fielding a part-time entry in the main series as they've done before. Now, of course, the Gray family, Tanner and Taylor, they bring a lot of money to that team. As we know, Thad Moffitt, his deal with DGR is thankfully over after not really producing anything. I'm not trying to disrespect Thad, but he really didn't do much of anything at that team, and don't know where he'll line up for next season. But it's interesting to see. I think Taylor's probably your best shot at the East Championship right now. Haven't really had many people announced for the full East Championship run, but I would say Taylor would probably be an early bet to win that championship, unless we get some more East entries later. But it's sad. The tie-ins that is that they will also field 3 full-time truck teams, 2 with full-time drivers, and then a 3rd truck, which is made up of a bunch of drivers. Expect Taylor to also do a bunch of truck starts this season, God save the Truck Series and its teams. I love Taylor. I met Taylor before. He's a good kid. I mean, I know a lot of people have bashed the Taylor, but I've met the kid personally, and he's been nothing but nice to me. So people might have different opinions of Taylor Gray, but from my personal experiences, Taylor Gray's been a lovely guy, at least to me. I see in the chat, they say that Sammy's doing East again. I just don't see it. I don't see the profit in it. And if you're spending that kind of money in the main series, the only reason I could see him doing East again is just to win another championship, because they won't be eligible. Well, they will be, but they won't. For anyone who thinks that Sammy actually has a chance to win the main championship, he doesn't. The 50-point bonuses, Sammy will not get that. He won't win the championship. And I think even if he wins every race, I don't think he would still have a chance at the championship. He'll probably finish second or third, but he will not win the championship. I could believe, though, that he wants to do East because he wants to win the championship. But is the profit really there, even if Engine Ice and TMC sponsorship is there? Now, will we see it? I hope so, because we need more cars for the East Series, obviously. But I could see Joe Gibbs just focusing on the main series this year. And, yeah, so that's kind of the news for East Series and DGR. Some more Arca NASCAR news tie-in. I talked about Justin Carroll on the last episode. Good to see him back still after the fiery crash he had at Dover last year, which I think totaled that car. Unfortunately, was a good car for that team. I asked how they were going to run the Truck Series, but they didn't get to run, unfortunately, because the qualifying rules with the pandemic, they didn't happen. But it looks like right now they are scheduled to do kind of both the same. Casey Campbell reported it, that Justin Carroll plans to do the Arca East race at Dover again. That East race, for some reason, pays very, very well. And we'll do the 2 Arca and Arca East combo races at Bristol and Iowa, with potentially more races added on for the future. The Truck Series debut for that team will be the Martinsville race in April, and looks to run Richmond and Bristol with, of course, any other races depending on sponsorship. So good to see that Justin's coming back with his team. They deserve to come back. They didn't really get a chance last year. Pandemic kind of put a damper on a lot of them. So good to see Justin back. And like I said, just good to see more Arca teams being announced. I feel like this season will be – I'm prediction right here, and I hope I'm really right on this, but I think this will be the biggest field sizes for Arca since 2018, which again is still not that much, but I still believe that we will have pretty decent field sizes for this season, and definitely bigger than 2020 and 2021. That is for sure. That's my opinion, at least. That kind of wraps up our Arca news. If anyone else has any, I haven't really found any else. We do have, I see in the chat that Ed Pompa will be back for Andy Hillenberg this season. I kind of figured that Ed will keep racing for Andy at a couple of races a year just until, he kind of decides to retire. But you got to love Ed Pompa. I'd love to have him on here sometime. But if that's the case, we will get into our NASCAR news if we have no more Arca news. 19 minutes in, we got 8 people watching. Thank you guys for joining me, of course. Only 2 likes. If we got 8 people watching, hit the like button if you guys want to. That'd be appreciated. Seeing in the chat, it says looks like Wayne may indeed have 3 cars. I know he's got like 6 cars on his property, but Wayne only owns 2 cars, from my knowledge. He owns that black Ford and he owns the white Chevrolet. So, Sir Welkstein in the chat, tell me where he's getting this 3rd car from, unless he bought another car, because I guess he did announce it, but would it be the car that Wayne owns, or is Tinkle leasing with Wayne? So does Wayne own the car, or is it kind of Tinkle leasing it with him? That's kind of what I've been thinking. But Wayne, I know for a fact, only owns 2 cars, and he leases other cars from time to time. But with that, we'll get into the NASCAR news portion of this show. I have been talking about. We have been talking about. Oh God, I can't believe I forgot about in the chat. Sir Relkstein in the chat just reminded me. Yes, Tim Vines, you guys might know who has his Glory to God truck team, is announcing that he is selling an Arca roller, chassis roller, that supposedly won the 2018 Arca race at Talladega with Joe Graf Jr. It's a Chad Bryant body and chassis roller. It's basically all ready to go. It just doesn't have an engine, no tranny, no gears, nothing like that, but it rolls. So that's pretty cool for any Arca team. I could see Wayne picking that car up. I really could. But yeah, that's forgot about that for a second. But yeah, let's get into the NASCAR news. I did point out a couple of weeks ago where Young's Motorsports might be this season, and they did announce that their third driver this season in the 20 will be Danny Bonn. It's basically that Tate Fogelman and Danny Bonn just basically switched rides. Tate will be in the 30, and Danny will be in the 20. As for Tate, that's an upgrade. I think Tate having the 30 team, which is a little bit better, more funded, and only one team so they can put all their resources into one. I think that team's really going to shine next year with Tate. I think Tate's a very underrated driver. He's definitely matured a lot. That truck win says otherwise, but when he's not battling for a win like a knucklehead, he's actually a pretty competent driver on the short tracks. As for Young's this year, Spencer Boyd switches numbers. I don't know why. If he's staying with the team, why don't just stay with number 20? But so Jesse Little in the 02, Spencer Boyd in the 12, and Danny Bonn in the 20. What do you guys think in the chat? What do you guys think about that? I think that's a good lineup. Is it better than last year's? Time will tell. I do think I like Chris Wright, but I definitely think that Jesse Little is a better option than Chris Wright. I think Jesse's going to bring that 02 truck back to prominence and try to get that top 20 bonus, which we will be following next year, or this year, I mean. The top 20 bonus for full-time truck teams. It's going to be definitely a huge battle this season with a huge influx of new teams running full-time. So good news for Young's Motorsports. I'm happy they're still staying with 3 series. All 3 of their trucks finished okay in the owner points, but I am a little bit concerned for Danny Bonn because, as we saw, the 20 truck did suffer a couple of DNQs last season and really didn't finish all that high in the owner points. That does make me a little concerned that we will have well over 36 entries for Daytona, the Daytona truck field, and that truck could be in danger of going home because we have seen that Young's Motorsports never really has shown the pace on the plate tracks by themselves. In the draft, yes, but by themselves, they have never particularly been all that fast. So that does make me a little concerned that with the 20 being as low as it was in the owner points last season, is that a little concern for them to possibly be making the show or not? Because obviously you do not want to start the season off with a DNQ. And that's going to be a huge problem for a lot of truck teams and Xfinity teams, which we'll get to in a second. Some Xfinity news, like I was just mentioning. Unfortunately, the qualifying rules that bit another team in 2021 was the Bassett racing team. Ronnie Bassett and Dylan Bassett, they had been kind of running for DGM part-time, but they had finally put their resources together. They got some cars together, and they were planning to go full-time in 2021 with the number 77, which is one of my favorite racing numbers. And yeah, that was their plan, to go full-time. But unfortunately, showing up to Daytona with no owner points and the top 40 rule, they had to make the race or their season was pretty much done. And unfortunately, despite showing pace that would have made the field, qualifying was rained out and they weren't allowed to run the first 11 races of the season, or 10 races, I mean. They did make the 11th race of the season with Austin Dillon, but that was their only start. As the next race at Charlotte, they failed to qualify. And that set them so far down in the owner points that they never attempted another race for their own team. Tried to do a couple more races with Mario Goslin. That didn't really go all that well. And kind of about mid-season, mid to late season, they kind of just went quiet. But they've come back this season, likely with the same equipment, and they will do approximately 15 to 18 races this season, as reported by Dustin Albina. I hope for the best for this team. I think just like SRQ Development, this is a team that people should not, take lightly. I think this team is very well capable of running top 20, top 15. But the question is, can they make races? Can they make races? That's the biggest problem. It doesn't matter how fast you are during the race. You got that one lap. If you botch that lap, you're done. So definitely a hard part on two guys who don't have a lot of experience. They have a lot of K&N experience, but even when it comes to Xfinity, Ronnie and Dylan only have about, 10 starts apiece? So, but I hope for the best for them, obviously, next season. They're good kids. They deserve it. Muff. I seen the chat. Yeah. Bassett was 8th fastest at the Charlotte practice session. They were more than quick enough to make the show. But then Dylan botched his qualifying lap, which, of course, meant why they went home. So the speed is there for that team. They just got to make the race first. And that's pretty much going to be for all teams in 2022. If they can just make the race, then they can show what they've got. More Xfinity news. Sam Hunt Racing. You just keep hearing about entries for Daytona. We'll have 2 entries for Daytona. The 24, which we saw last year for a race or two, and the 26, the main car. The 24 being driven by Jeffrey Earnhardt, and the 26 being driven by Ryan Truex. How many Daytona entries does this put us at now? What? This has to be putting us around 50. We have to be around 50 now. And Bob Pockers did report that they have raised the Xfinity field from 36 to 38. That is a small prize. I know you guys want 40, but that comes down to TV contracts and a bunch of other stuff that likely would never get changed. The fact that we got to 38 is kind of a miracle. So, but that's how it was back in the day. I know you guys, a lot of you younger viewers aren't really used to, 12 DNQs a race, but that's kind of how it was back in the Busch Series in the early 2000s and late 2000s. The Busch Series and Nationwide Series had around 6 to 7 cars a race going home. We had that many cars showing up back then. But then, of course, throughout the early 2010s, we only had about 1 or 2, and sometimes we didn't have any. So everyone acting like, having 12 cars going from Daytona is something new when really it's not. Back in the 80s, we used to have, 25 cars go home? So, again, it's nothing new. But for part-time teams and full-time teams, making that race is going to be so crucial. That is for sure. Nurtec ODT, a little bit, just a tiny bit of Cup news, but it does involve one of the lower teams, Rick Ware. Nurtec will return to Rick Ware Racing next year, which I'm happy to see. Cody Ware gets another full-time shot in a better car. Happy to see that too. Joey Hand will run the road course races in the 15. Happy to see that as well. People bashing Rick Ware Racing think this is going to be their breakout year. That's for sure. Happy to see it. They deserve it. Moving on for that real quick. I forgot to report this in my last news video. I did announce that SRQ Development will have the number 87, but I forgot to mention that Rafael Lessard, the former GMS driver, will be the driver of that car. I forgot to mention that. I don't know if he's going to be the driver in every one of their races, but he will drive the car for this season, and their first race will be starting at Richmond with that team, but I believe they said their first race in general will be at Atlanta. Excuse me. Next news, Alpha Prime Racing, Tommy Joe Martins. Holy crap, this team has just been all over the place with news. And we still have one more announcement for this team tomorrow. We had Howie DiSavino III. Did not know Howie was still in the sport. We had seen him run the 2020 Arca race at Daytona, and I don't think I've really seen him since. No, 2021 Arca race at Daytona, and I haven't seen him since. Good to see him back, obviously. Again, always good to see people like him getting a chance. He will run 6 races for the 45 car this season, and I think this is a good chance. Just like Raja Caruth, let's put a young kid in there, and let's see what he's got. This is an easy top 20, top 15 capable team, and let's see what the kid's got. If he succeeds, great. We'll keep him going. If he doesn't, well, bring the sponsor money. But I think it's a good opportunity for Howie. He hasn't always had the best rides. By the time he started driving the 32 for Wentron was on its last legs, and I don't even think Wentron Racing even exists anymore. I believe that team has been fully bought out by AM Racing, as they were sharing a shop anyway. But I believe AM Racing now officially owns the rights to Wentron, and Wentron Racing with Kevin Sawinski is officially gone. And it's now AM Racing. Kaz Gralla, as we've seen, who supposedly is driving the money team car. I've yet to see a picture of it. For my personal opinion, for that money team car, I'm still going to believe it when I see it. That's just me. I know they've made this announcement. I know Kaz Gralla made the announcement, but until I see a picture of this car, I just don't believe it. That's just me. He'll be driving in a couple of races, 3 races in the 45 and 1 in the 44. Josh Belicky was announced today, I believe. He'll be in the 44 driving 6 races, 4 road courses, and 2 ovals. Again, I think this is a great opportunity for a guy like Josh Belicky, who he has the talent, but he's never gotten the ride to really ever show it. Even on the road courses, where he's the road race, he's considered a ringer. He's never had the right equipment to really show what he's got. I would say the best car he's had his chance on is the SS Greenlight team. And even that team is only 20th to 15th at best. This team, I really could feel like he could get a top 10, top 5 finish with this team. And I really hope that this is the breakout year that Josh needs to get his career really in the right track, because we've seen him with some rides that just overall haven't been all that competitive, but he definitely deserves the ride that could get him to that next level, if you guys know what I mean. We also have some news going back down to the truck series. As it was mentioned last season, Timmy Hill will run 2 full-time trucks in 2022, but announced today that the 5 will be the second number. Now, if you guys don't know the history, their father, Jerry Hill, former truck driver, did run the number 5 for Rick Ware Racing. So that's kind of why they run in the number 5. It's a little bit of tribute to their father. I think that's really nice. It's really cool. Brings back a little bit of it brings an easy Darlington throwback for one of their trucks. But the 5 was actually, Toby Christie announced that the 5 would actually be part-time. And that doesn't shock me. I was starting to realize, where are they going to find the full season sponsorship for this second truck? And sure enough, they've announced that the 5 will be part-time, more than likely with Tyler Hill, Timmy's brother, at the wheel most of the time. Tyler's a good talent. I just don't think he's had enough races to really prove himself. He's had, I think, 4 or 5 Xfinity starts and 12 to 15 truck races. I mean, he did finish second at Talladega and nearly won the thing with that Tate Fogelman crash. So I guess he does have talent, but definitely some big improvements for Hill Motorsports, and it's good to see. We all love Timmy Hill. Every time I've met a Timmy Hill hater, I just don't get it. I never have understood the hate for Timmy Hill. He's a great guy. He deserves everything he's gotten. And I wish him nothing but the best for this season. I think we can all agree on that. But, so the 5 will be the second truck, but it'll also be part-time instead of full-time. Don't expect that truck at the dirt races, I would say. and probably the races out west. And like Texas as well. I predict that truck would predominantly be maybe a Midwest to East Coast truck and not running the races out west. The only race out west I could see them running would be the season finale, just because it's the season finale and you want to go out with a bang. If you guys know what I mean. We do have some Daytona 500 news, which does involve a low-budget team. Carl Long looks like is just going all out for the Daytona 500 again, running a second entry for J.J. Yaley. The number has not been confirmed yet, although likely it will be number 13. No sponsor has been announced yet, hoping it's the Fat Boy ice cream car because that'd be such a cool-looking car. But, yeah, two of my favorite underdogs, Timmy Hill and J.J. Yaley. Right now, this does put us at 40 entries. This does put us at 40 entries for the 500, a full field. But will we see, supposedly, yes, the money team has announced, but I've yet to see a confirmation of a car picture. NY Racing supposedly has a car picture as well. Gaunt Racing, despite some reports from Bob Pockers that the team might run full-time, which I never would have really understood anyway, that they will not be at Daytona. They don't have the car ready in time. The first race I would probably expect them would be at Talladega in May. So, shame to see that the Gaunt brothers won't be there. But right now we're looking at a most possible about 42 entries for the 500. But it's good to know that right now we do have a guaranteed 40 with 2 MBM cars, 66 of Timmy Hill, and yet to be number announced J.J. Yaley. So, happy for that. And I even put a tweet out saying, whether you love him or you hate him, and I hope you guys are the exact same thing, you have to respect Carl Long for being one of the biggest gamblers in this sport for being a low-budget team. He is definitely a gambler, and that is respect, in my opinion, whether you guys like it or not. Kind of a little bit of last bit of NASCAR news here for our episode. Mike Harmon Racing, as I reported, and many, many, many other people reported back in, what was it? Was that November when this all happened, or was that December? Mike Harmon Racing participated in a charity event. It's well-known charity event with a 2015 Dodge, but a 2021 race car. And although he was told many times not to race it, he did, unfortunately, did get a fine from NASCAR. A 75-point penalty, $50,000 to crew chief Ryan Bell, and basically the team was not allowed to run until they got the fine paid off. Well, surprising even to the team, they won. The $50,000 fine was rescinded. The suspension was rescinded as well, but the points fine does stay. Now, the 74 team was 40th in the owner's points anyway. So if this does go, the one thing I did not get confirmation of, does the owner's points go to this season's or last season's? If anyone in the chat could confirm that to me, does the 75-point penalty go for this year or last year? Because if it goes for last year, that would put my MHR at 91 points and actually 41st behind the MBM 13 car. But if that's the case for this season, then they start out at negative 75 points, kind of like the 66 car did back in 2020. And then, of course, that car would just start and park the whole season. So either way, I'm just glad Mike Harmon Racing is allowed to be at the track. They deserve it. Someone in the chat, Age Gale, thank you. So for this season, so it looks like they are starting at a 75-point deficit, which if they can make races, I think they can make that up rather quickly. I think they can definitely make that up rather quickly. But I wish them the best. Again, it's all about making races, and they better have the speed because right now they don't have much for owner points. So that's kind of the news updates for Mike Harmon. They are allowed to race. They don't have to sit out. The penalty was rescinded, which I think in personally is the right call. I think it would have been wrong to keep the fine. It was all in fun and games. It wasn't meant to be a test session. We all know that. Mike was not cheating. He wasn't. He just should have thought not to bring a 2021 car and maybe bring another one of his Dodges or just bring the Dodge, just bring the one car. So hopefully something like this doesn't happen to Mike again, and he can have a successful season. It does look like, though, that that's all the news we have in today's. Lots of news to cover this week, I tell you, from NASCAR and Arca, and more news even tomorrow. And, of course, we got the Rolex 24 this Saturday. Thank you guys for joining me for this impromptu episode of Arca Racing NASCAR Backmarker News. Sorry, I really didn't have any time to warn you guys. But thank you for joining me. We had 9 people watch. If you guys want to hit the like button, I would definitely appreciate that. And we'll catch you all sometime next week with another episode. So long, guys.